Hey guys, I've been out this morning training, doing my Dantian Qigong training and my Chinese boxing training, what you'd know as Tai Chi, but I do Tai Chi the way it was originally intended, as a fully integrated combat and healing art. And one of the things about Taijiquan and Qigong is that it's called an internal exercise. And this morning while I was training, I was really deeply examining the functioning of my body and the way that it works in this internal movement. Now, I'm always trying to explain this to people, and it's difficult because we all have preconceived ideas about the way things work. And when you start talking about internal movement, it has been deeply contextualized with Qi or energy, which has produced a whole stream of people who do magic no-touch throwing and Sith Lord, Jedi style electrocution with their fingers and all sorts of interesting and wild and wonderful things. And so the translation gets lost and it sounds mystical because essentially internal movement is an external thing, right? It belongs to the body. The internal aspect of Taijiquan, let's look at it from Western boxing, is what the boxer is doing in their mind, say when they're shadow boxing. This guy's throwing a punch, I'm going to do wet weave, I'm going to do this, right? That's the internal part. It's a concept or a construct or I don't like imagination. It's a construct that we are using almost like in our own virtual holodeck inside our mind to think, oh, something's coming, I better do this, I better do that, and allowing our body to react unconsciously to it. So we do this if, when you think of something and you react, like if you're falling off a cliff and you're sleeping and you jerk, that is actually an internal movement, right? Because the mind thought of something, the body reacted, and this is really what we're trying to do, internal movement. So the external part of internal movement is what the body is doing, and I'm going to explain that with some diagrams on the board because I think this explains it a little bit better. Now, I've drawn here the axial skeleton pretty poorly. Let me bring this forward a little bit. The axial skeleton, right? So we have a skull, we have a spine, a rib cage, so well drawn, right? The sacrum, coccyx, and what is essentially the pelvis, right? Now, there may be a slight difference of the axial skeleton in a Western term, but we find when we start breaking things down into functional units in the body that they tend to bleed over into other areas anyway, right? Because everything is connected. And so maybe so with the pelvis. But essentially, this is the center of our body. Now, in internal movement, what we are doing is we are relying on the deep core muscles to move everything else. So quite often I explain to people that if we got a tube of toothpaste, right, and we pulled the top off and we got the toothpaste tube and went and squeezed it, toothpaste would come out, right? This is exactly the same concept that we're talking about with Qi coming out of our body, but instead of thinking mystical energy, right, this mystical energy, and if you want to think that, that's fine, there's a context for that. But what we're talking about is the release of momentum. So if I was to throw a spear or shot put a ball or even just throw a ball, I am releasing my body's energy into the ball to throw it. That's not mystical, it's a very functional thing. It's straight out physics, right? So with our axial skeleton, we're looking at the deep core. Now, the deep core actually goes from the tongue. I'm going to draw a tongue. That's a tongue. It looks a bit silly like a tongue, but it'll do, right? Tongue, and it goes right down through the body, through the larynx, through the diaphragm, through the psoas. It's a bit high, isn't it? Through the diaphragm, through the psoas, and all this, and it goes all the way down through the legs and actually connects to a midpoint down on the feet, which is called the point of central equilibrium in a Qigong context. I'm not sure how I got that name, but it did, and it stuck. So the whole fascia system lines up from the tongue right down through the body. And this is the deepest layer of our core, of our fascia system. And what we're looking at is how we actually move that to move the rest of us. So if I had the toothpaste tube analogy again, if there was tension in this tube is made of like steel, right? So it wasn't made of like plastic and aluminium or whatever, they used to be aluminium, plastic and stuff like that. And if it was rigid steel, and I went, it wouldn't squeeze, right? No toothpaste would come out. So that's like tension in our body. But if our bodies remain to have this elastic, soft quality, then it actually allows us to squeeze this toothpaste tube of our body and allow energy to be transmitted through the appendicular skeleton, which is scapula and arms and femur and the tib and fib, right, down to the feet. So what we're looking at, is how we actually squeeze this core of our body. Now, from a Chinese concept, right, this is where all our internal organs are. This is where all the qi and blood in our body is kept. So if we thought about the toothpaste tube analogy again, if all the energy, all the qi and blood was kept in our core and we squeeze that core, we would literally squeeze that qi and blood out our limbs, throwing a ball, converting the momentum of rotation, the way our body works. So what happens a lot in the West is we start breaking things up because it's the way we've been taught to isolate, and even compound lifts aren't a whole body movement. So let me take this back a step. I'll get a bit woo. I'll talk a little bit about chakras and about Dantian. Dantian are geometries or areas of the body. And so we have a lower Dantian, which would basically be this whole base area from my perineum up to about halfway up, just past my belly button. That would be my lower Dantian. It would comprise of the low, the perineal chakra, the navel chakra, and up into the tummy. I think it's actually called the, I've gone blank. Solar plexus, punch it. The solar plexus chakra. Then we have middle Dantian, which would start from about here. And middle Dantian comprises of essentially this bottom chakra. It's where they meet. Point in the center of the chest, I think that's heart chakra, right? In the center of the chest, and pit of the throat for the throat chakra. And then we have the upper Dantian, which I'll draw in purple, which comprises of this geometry of our head, or this structure, this shape of our head. And we've got our third eye point, and we've got our crown chakra, right? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, if we look at this for a moment, right? Now, chakra and Dantian, different language, but essentially what we've got is the chakra point at the base and the intersection, at the base and the intersection, at the base and the intersection, and a point in the middle of each, which gives us our chakra system. So Dantian are like these functional areas of this. And we can start, whilst there's an energetic concept around this that we're welcome to discuss and has interesting overlays and interesting ways of discussing human physiology, human function, human spirituality and stuff like that. These geometries are these Dantian are essentially geometries of our body that we are looking to grow into the most complete beast possible. So what we're actually doing in our Tai Chi is we're trying to squeeze, move and compress these Dantian and get this whole axial skeleton to rotate from side to side and keep our limbs super loose. And so we can transmit the energy from here out through our limbs. If our limbs are tense, if they hold residual tension or splinting patterns from injury, or even as we know, emotions, the body keeps the score, right? So emotions, traumas, different things can cause splinting patterns in our body and make us hold ourselves rigid. Poor seating habits, poor lifestyle habits, poor movement habits, even poor relationships with that aspect of our body can cut down the way that we functionally move that area of the body. And so what Qigong is literally trying to do is teach us how to free up this whole axial skeleton so we can allow our limbs, our arms, and our legs to become loose and soft and move under the command of what's happening here. Now, I'm going to deepen this concept for a moment, and I like this analogy. This is my analogy, so just bear with me for a moment. millions and millions of years ago in the primordial swamp of existence, we were a jellyfish. How the hell am I going to draw a jellyfish? I've never drawn this before. Jellyfish, right? So let's just draw a jellyfish, right? Let's give this jellyfish a smile, because he managed to survive in the primordial swamp of existence, which must have been challenging, right? A lot of growth, his awareness, everything had to be thriving toward evolution. In Taijiquan, in Chinese boxing and Qigong, we have a concept called forward intent. And this is that Taoist concept of us always being able to just move around, squeeze. You know, sometimes we might need to, boom, go through something, right? If it's attacking us, if there's a threat to our existence, yes, we need to do that. And so really, there's a nice analogy between this jellyfish and, if you're a bit of a yogi, a bit of an energy person, this lower chakra system. Now, in Chinese medicine, this whole area is related to Jing, which is like the storage house of our primordial essence, the seed that we pass on to the next generations. It's about basic survival. So this jellyfish needed survival, right? Now, as this jellyfish grew and developed over eons and eons, he started to have to grow and evolve. So what ended up happening is, as he grew, now I'm going to draw this jellyfish again with my black pen, there it is. The jellyfish grew larger. Oh, that's really bad. Ha! Let me delete that. Okay. He grew up and he grew more organelles, because this is almost like a single cell. You can almost think of this as a single cell, and it's got all its organisms, organelles in it, right? And little feelers going out into the world, feeling out into the primordial swamp, okay? And so he wanted to get a bit, as he got smarter and brighter, he grew a whole heap of different appendages that allowed him to survive. He grew livers and gallbladders and stomachs and spleens and kidneys and heart, right? Big set of lungs, which allowed him to grow a bigger brain. All this kind of stuff, right? This jellyfish grew. But this jellyfish is our lower Dantian still. And they say in Chinese Kung Fu, Chinese medicine, Chinese philosophy, that someone should keep their center. And that's like our center of gravity. It's why in martial arts and stuff we sink down, or the idea of really letting our body weight sink. And so we're here, even in sport, if I was, say, a rugby player and I'm running with the ball, if I'm top heavy, right, and someone tackles me, I'm going over. If I've got that low center of gravity as I run, I'm like a Mack truck, right? Just really low, heavy, with a lot of momentum. Okay, so this jellyfish grew this body, but out of this body, he grew tentacles, okay? I'm going to draw them as tentacles, because I'm going to use an analogy of, what's it called? Godzilla, okay? He's got his little suction cups, right? So let's think of them as tentacles for a moment. How do you think a jellyfish would go if its tentacles were rigid? It'd be really stiff, right? It'd be like a 1965 Godzilla, okay? But what we want now is we actually want these tentacles on this fella to be nice and loose. We want it to be a nice CGI and modern Godzilla, right? Or modern sea monster where the city's just crushed. Where he's got momentum and power being carried from the core through the body. Okay? And so all this energy, this movement, when they say, oh, my movement comes from the center, all the chi is coming from Dantian, it comes up and out my arm. No, it's not if you're just doing this. Okay? Your movement has to be moved like a jellyfish would move its tentacles. Then I can get power from my body. And all Qigong is about building power. It's about this jellyfish dominating the primordial swamp of existence. Okay, it's about him evolving, gaining power from his environment, understanding himself, having complete awareness of what he needs to do, which way he needs to go, if he needs to hide under this reef so he can hide from that big shadow, or if he needs to go out and be in this stream of nutrient-dense water that's flowing, like what he understands, okay, that he needs to do for his best survival, okay? So the point I'm making with internal movement through going through all this is internal movement is literally moving from our jellyfish, taking our mind out of our body, taking our cognition, our tension, our rigid intent, and having an attention on how our body moves to make the whole body move as one entity. If one part of the body moves, all parts of the body move, okay? And so in Qigong, what we're learning about is how to reconnect our entire body to this evolutionary state of the jellyfish. The jellyfish, I love it, right? Evolutionary state of the jellyfish. And by doing this, it allows everything else to come back into harmony. It allows us to delete the tension in our bodies, okay? Return ourselves back to a natural state where the body is open and it is growing open. These Dantian, these areas are opening. We're not sitting down all the time hunched. We're literally allowing ourselves to come back into the original shape that has forward intent so we can grow and evolve, get physically stronger, get more intellectually smart, condense more chi. Now, chi is literally the meat suit that my consciousness wears. So, just to bring back that for an analogy for a moment, we've got our Jing down the bottom here, right? This is our DNA, if you will. It's more than DNA and it's different from DNA, but let's just say it's DNA because we're passing it on to the next generation. Then we have our chi. And in this section we have like stomach, spleen, liver, gallbladder, all these areas that are making chi. Now chi is, as I said, the meat suit, right? It is matter and energy fused. Our matter has energy. We're a biological organism, so we have enzymes, proteins. We have a nervous system that's fire. We have all these life, right? We're living beings, so we have energy. But it's not just energy, right? What we're talking about when we're talking about chi is biology, okay? It does actually discuss this in the Chinese classics, talking about chi as being the physical meat suit that we wear. It is not mystical energy inside us. If we're talking about the mystical energy inside us, we are actually talking about Shen. Shen is our consciousness, and our consciousness is literally wearing this meat suit, right? Point to a consciousness. Can't do it, right? Our consciousness is energy, and they would say in Chinese that the Jing is the most dense, Qi is less dense, and basically it's a fluid, right? We are literally fluid sacs with some organelles and some cells floating around. So Qi is less dense, and Shen is the most energetic, the least dense. And so that's what we're talking about. Shen is probably the only energy we have in our body. Qi is our meat suit, and Jing is here. So what we're looking at is returning that whole idea, returning our movement back to how our core functions, and letting our meat suit be completely relaxed, open, and alive so it can follow the commands of our evolutionary guide, our jellyfish that lives in our body. But we're all stuck up here, right? In this cognition. Now that's important. We've got to think about stuff. We've got to nut stuff out. But what should happen when we're doing our Qigong, if we can allow our energy, if we can allow our energy to descend down, we get the yin, which is heavy substance, accumulating here. And then, as I was saying, as it goes up, it gets lighter. And then as it gets right to the top, they talk about this being the clear yang. Okay, and for the yogis out there, I'll draw a little spiral going up and out of the crown chakra, right? as our consciousness ascends. But this clear consciousness should not be bogged down in overcognitive thought, like it can. But as we know, genius is generally achieved in those aha moments, and they're clear, right? You've ever had one of those aha moments, and like you may have been really bogging down on something, okay, and that's what's allowed you to get to that spot. But also sometimes when things happen naturally, when they're almost spontaneous. And this is kind of what we're talking about. All the churning and all the thinking and all the whatnot is nice and grounded in our body, so that clear consciousness can rise to our head to give us our spontaneous genius, our spontaneous understanding of the world without having to be stuck in our heads, cognitive and mechanical about life and everything else that goes with that. And so what Qigong is literally about is teaching us how to move from this level of our intent to survive, to move on, to evolve, to grow, and allowing all that to settle down so our thoughts and our body can grow into the most natural shape, its original shape. All right, guys, I'll leave that here for today. That was my feelings in today. What I was feeling in training was literally moving, how my exoskeleton was moving through this relaxed frame. And this is an idea I've had for a while, but this was my morning meditation. My morning meditation was literally sitting there and just feeling into that nice relaxation and how my body can generate power from my jellyfish, from my core, and doesn't have to be held up rigidly in muscular force, in brute force. I can produce power from my very evolutionary center. Okay, so if you're tense, if you're stressed, if you're holding heaps of tension in this area, this isn't going to work so well. Your body is literally like taking on shapes that aren't natural, right? If you can't allow your body to be relaxed and open, this is what is causing the chi to stagnate, the chi systems to break down, the biological systems. Like if you have excess tension in your arms because you've just done heaps of gym, or you work really hard and you never relax and you don't breathe properly, so your shoulders are up. And you're like, why am I so fucking angry? All right, it's like, but still be able to have this whole, still be able to feel powerful. A lot of people think that softness is weakness. Fuck! It's not weakness, it's the ability to produce power from your body. So like even if you're a healer, okay, and as I said, Tai Chi is a combat and healing art, it's the ability to be able to lay your hands on someone and have you squeeze the intent from your body to allow that toothpaste to ripple out relaxed hands, okay? To have that intent coming from your core, from the center of your being, not just sitting there just using hands, okay? We need to draw from source, and source is this core of our body. And I mean, this is infinitely deep, right? This keeps going in more internal and more internal and more internal and more internal. And yes, you could get very esoteric and spiritual about that if you want, but how we get there is through accessing through the physical meat suit, right? So it's good just to break it down like that and learn about how this looseness in this body can really help us to grow as a humanity, grow as a people, break down splinting and injury patterns in our body, and teach us to deeply connect with our evolutionary path, which is something that is a really big topic right now. And so I firmly believe that Qigong holds a whole lot of wisdom in this, because even in yoga and things like this, we are learning very rigid movement. I think the difference is, and I mean that's starting to get displaced by the movement culture, starting to do more animal movements, more flow movements and stuff like this. Yes, it's happening. But again, a lot of that is built around rigidity. Like even if we go to a physio, right, and it's like your shoulders sore, it's like this, we need to do this exercise and that exercise and this exercise and this. It's like just strapping band-aids of tension onto the body. When is anyone ever returning themselves into this natural state? When the tensegrity of the body, the openness, the relaxed state of the body is nice and open, held in position. with the tenseria, the natural tension that holds the body upright, being held in such a way that is opening and growing the body in the correct way. This doesn't really happen. It's like we're splinting tension on tension on tension on tension on tension on tension. Look at society. It's a direct relationship. COVID, then war, then this and that. And it's just like tension, 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 tension band-aids everywhere. We never return back to an originality. Okay? And it's so important, as you know, like even with recovery in exercise or with problems in our lives, that we return back to a centered, grounded, original state, and then allow the natural manifestation of the clear consciousness to rise out of our body. And this is not happening in society. We are constantly putting new laws and mandates and different tension band-aids that you can literally see as ripping the fabric of society apart. And so the message of Qigong, and why I think it's so important as a society that we understand the messages of Qigong, because Qigong is 5,000, 10,000 years old, right? Our ancestors used it. In fact, even acting like seeing, indigenous people bounce around, I'm pretty funny right now, bouncing around like a kangaroo or something, right? Or acting like an animal. They are getting into an original state of being, connecting with their environment. Now, Qigong literally teaches us to move like the human animal, which has our whole evolutionary history programmed into our body, right? Because we've evolved from animal to animal. Or even if we haven't, right, and you're a devout Christian, I still want you to access this. So even if we were designed by God, He has given us dominion over the kingdom by giving us access to all the animals' movement patterns, relatively speaking, right? So whichever way you want to think about that, all those patterns are within our bodies, and so we can learn and connect with our environment through that. And one of the deepest, most profound things that Qigong has taught me when I'm standing, just still, just breathing. And one of my lines I teach to my students is, be the sunbathing lizard. And when you look at a sunbathing lizard on a rock, right, his gills just... not doing anything else. Okay? His body is completely at rest. If something happens to disturb him, he's gone, right? He'll scurry off. If a bug flies by, he'll eat it, right? He's not doing anything else. But we're so contrived as creatures. So Qigong helps to break us down that contrivedness, slow us down into the pace of our environment, allows us to connect. One of my favorite lines is, it helps me become nature. So if you want to learn more about how to become nature, connect with nature, connect back with your original self, and embody this in movement, and literally infuse these principles into your physical body, into your physical being, to become groundedness. Not just say, I'm a very grounded person, but be groundedness, to be centeredness, to understand about power from softness, to learn about how to squeeze your toothpaste tube to add in energy into your life and into other people for healing. All true warriors learn to heal, right? Tai Chi at its pinnacle is actually healing art similar to Reiki. And in ancient China, Qigong was to healers as barbells are to weightlifters. So Qigong was the tool that people learnt to get more energy, okay, to be able to access more energy from their body, to hold better boundaries so they're not giving out too much energy, because that's a thing too, right? And so Qigong was to healers of what barbells are to weightlifters. So if you're a healer into quantum healing, Reiki, massage, acupuncture, physio, chiro, you're a psychologist, right? Because you're sitting there taking on people's shit. Being able to return your body and drop out tension and programs that are given to you through the day, through people, through biocommunication, it's really important. And so Qigong offers you the ability to be able to access these things and learn about them, infuse them into your body and allow them to become you, or you become them, or maybe there's a fusion somewhere there in the middle, or maybe it's nothing of those and the box doesn't exist. But let's get out of the philosophy and allow me to thank you guys very much. It's been a really long video, but I hope you find it, if you found it, an interesting topic, an interesting conversation. This is exactly what I teach in my Foundations of Qigong course. So whilst, yes, you learn some amazing Qigong methods, right? And you learn how to use acupuncture points and access meridians in Qigong movements and access this part of the body movement, understand all the philosophy of how this goes in depth, what each of the organs are doing in this system, the Jing Chen Shi, how this evolutionary system works, what it means in our life, how to build more Jing, how to build more Qi, how to refine and evolve your Shen. My Qigong teacher training program, Foundations of Qigong, teaches all of this kind of stuff. You do not need to want to teach Qigong. This, I've had people repeat, and more than one person repeat in my course, why isn't this taught in schools? This is like humanism 101. I'm like, I know, right? Why is this not taught in schools? So even if you're just interested in this for your own life, you want to develop an amazing Qigong practice for yourself, but you're on a wellness journey, you're on a spiritual journey, hell, you just love your body and you want to feel into it and understand it more, Qigong really can allow you to access that on a very personal, on a very internal level. Another reason why it's called internal exercise, because this is an investigation into yourself, physically, emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually. All designed in a flow drill that teaches you flow. That's why many business leaders have used this. So if you're a stress head business person and you need practice to bring yourself down, get centered, get focused, be able to get into flow and do your thing. Jack Mao, I think that's his name, he's always been a Tai Chi practitioner, and lots of really successful Chinese business people still use a lot of Qigong and Tai Chi because it helps them to understand a lot about life, about themselves, and about the movement through life and this ability to evolve and grow and develop. So if you're interested, please shoot me a message. I'd love to see some comments if you feel so inclined. I do have other Qigong training circles that go on around the place between Gold Coast and Brisbane, other little weekend workshops. You can always check out my website at all the W's with QiFit, Q-I-F-I-T, because we want to be Qi Fit, right? qifit.com.au. You can check out my events there. You can check out my blog and my website. Get in contact with me, ask me any questions. If this has interested you, yeah, I'll leave it there. Thank you so much. That's my morning rant. I hope you're in good health.